Kevin Franks did not drown. Kevin Franks had already stopped breathing by the time you drove off the road.
Kevin was definitely breathing when we went off the road.
How do you know?
He was making me come.
What? You were having sex at 100 miles an hour?
110. I must have hit a pothole.
Hello and welcome to Unequal Sequel. My name is Dave and I'm one of the two hosts of this enthralling podcast.
And I'm Rich and I'm the other host of this enthralling podcast. Think of me as Lightning McQueen to Dave's Mater. I'm faster than fast and he's a rusty old truck.
I wonder where you're going to go that one, and it was good in the end. The premise of Unequal Sequel is very simple. We ask our guests their best ever sequel, their worst ever sequel, and finally their dream sequel.
And of course we quite often drift off and talk about other things. Sometimes movies, sometimes life in general.
We also do have to mention, we do love spoilers, don't we, Rich? Because we talk about movies a lot. They're new and old, mainly old. So if you don't want to know about a movie we're talking about, just press pause, skip forward 10 minutes, whatever it is. Go and do your cosplay costume. Come back and it will all be okay, because on today's episode we are joined by Anna Smith.
Anna is a brilliant film critic and broadcaster. She's also the host of the Girls on Film podcast. It's all about female filmmakers and female film critics. She does some brilliant work on kind of feminist film, and also you might recognise Anna from when she's been regularly filling in for Mark Kermode on the Film Review Show.
We're very excited to sit down with Anna and chat all things sequels with her.
These are Anna Smith's Unequal Sequels. Enjoy.
Can you remember the first sequel you got excited about?
Well, I remember watching Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and absolutely loving that. And then going back to Raiders, because I was at the age where I hadn't already seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first one. So I guess that's when I started to engage in the idea of sequels beyond your obvious sort of Disney movies that you watch when you're a kid, you know. So Temple of Doom, yeah, that was going around on VHS in my youth. And yeah, thoroughly enjoyed that. Although, of course, as a feminist podcaster, I now look back on it in a slightly different light. But yeah, that was probably the first one that I really got into.
Temple of Doom. And how old were you when you saw that?
I need to do the maths, but I'm going to say like 10 or something, probably. Yeah, pretty young.
And that's the second one, isn't it? So
yeah.
Had you seen the first one?
No, I hadn't. I'd heard about it. So I saw this one, and then so I did things a little bit back to front, because I wasn't really old enough to have seen Raiders, and I was only probably just old enough to see Temple of Doom, because there's a few sort of icky scenes in it, aren't there? But yeah, I remember my mother used to be a Sunday school teacher, and she actually showed part of the video as part of her lesson one day in Sunday school. I cannot remember for the life of me what relevance it had to Christianity, but I thought it was pretty cool that she did that. And I was like, yeah, my mum's quite a cool Sunday school teacher, you know.
I can understand if you showed Raiders, because obviously that's got the Ark of the Covenant, isn't it? But
yeah,
Temple of
I can't
Doom,
remember what it was. I'm sure she found a very good, you know, debating point. And of course, you know, if you want to get kids interested, show them a bit of a movie, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Did
you have a crush on Harrison Ford as well at that point, like everyone else did?
I don't know.
I mean, I did.
We did.
Yeah, I know. Can I be the only person in the world that hadn't have a crush on him? I don't remember having one. I mean, he was like a very grown man to me. I think, you know, I was kind of more fancying like teenage boys in films at that stage, which we can get onto later.
Brilliant. So it was a cinema job, was it?
No, it's VHS. I mean, to be honest, I think it was interesting because I just listened to your episode with Boyd Hilton, and he went to the cinema loads when he was a kid. But I'm like the opposite. I'm the rebel who was never taken to the cinema, or hardly ever, and then made it her life's obsession because it was the forbidden fruit. So, yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, it's not that. We were discouraged from going with our friends unless our parents really knew that it was going to be suitable for our age group, which I know is a lot of what a lot of parents do. But also we didn't often go as a family. I would probably go and see, when I reached a certain age, I'd go and see the Bond movie with my dad, or I'd see the big blockbuster with my friends, but I didn't have a very great sort of background in film, and so I spent a lot of time catching up in my teens and 20s and 30s and 40s.
Is that when you had your cinematic awakening, would you say?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's jumping ahead a little bit, but I think my cinematic awakening was watching Back to the Future.
Okay.
So I was sat on Christmas Day, and I was again watching it on the small screen, but I was just blown away watching this film on TV that just transported me to another place, another time, that was exciting, that it was just the magic of cinema was beamed into my room that day. And I just then started going more with my friends to the cinema. And so I think small screen sort of turned me onto the big screen.
Oh, amazing.
I love that. I think I was quite similar. I don't think I I kind of went with my gran used to really like cinema. And so I went a few times with my gran and saw like The Third Man and Casablanca and all these kind of re-releases of older movies. And I don't think it was until I was in my teenage years, and the cinema used to be a really good place to go and bunk off school and smoke, essentially.
Oh God.
Smoking. I remember smoking in cinemas. Wow.
Yeah, you used to sit in the back of the cinema, bunk off school for the afternoon, sit in the back of the cinema and smoke and just watch every movie possible. But yeah, I think that was my sort of cinematic awakening.
Yeah, I think when I was a teenager, it then became the thing to do. If you went on a date or with your mates, and I grew up in Exeter, and at that stage, actually, didn't feel like there was loads to do other than go to the shops or go to the cinema during the day. If you were, if you were too young to go out clubbing or whatever. So yeah, quite a lot of things were seen. Some of them good, some of them terrible.
Yeah.
Was there a cinema near you? Is that why you didn't go? It wasn't part of the traditions? Or
I moved around a lot when I was younger because my dad was in the Navy. So we lived in America, we lived in Scotland, we lived in lots of places, but my teens were spent in Exeter. But yeah, when we were in Exeter, we were quite rural, so I couldn't just pop out to the cinema. I'd had to ask for a lift or get the bus or something. But I do remember when I was very young in the States, my mum taking me to see 101 Dalmatians on the big screen in one of those cinemas that you'd get in malls, but like really small malls. And we went for a Roy Rogers meal afterwards, which is like this burger joint that they had, and that was a memorable occasion. So that was good.
I love that.
Brilliant.
So when you watched Temple of Doom and it's on VHS, was it a family night? Was it your pick? Or was it your dad's or your mum's?
No, I don't think it was family. I think it might be to do with my elder sister.
Yeah.
Because she's like 3 years older, and that's often the way, is that you end up listening to the music and watching the movies that your elder sibling does. So I think it was because she sort of turned me on to the storylines, and I'd heard about them. And I remember she also used to come home telling me about E.T. She told me the story of E.T., having seen it at the cinema, and just her relating this to me got me excited about going to the cinema. I was like, oh my God, that sounds incredible. So I guess I grew up sort of being really excited about going to the cinema from hearing about it.
Yeah. Did she show you films that you shouldn't have seen before you've seen them then?
She didn't, but naming no names, some of my school friends did.
Okay.
I remember because their parents were much less strict than mine.
Yeah.
And I remember going around for sleepovers, busting them now, and they'd be watching something like The Omen, some really dark stuff for a kid that's been brought up quite respectably.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh my God, I can't sleep now, and being absolutely terrified by this stuff. Absolutely terrified.
I was that naughty older brother as well. I was like, I'm 8 and 10 years older than my brother and sister, and so I used to like sneak my little brother into movies he was way too young to see.
Marked for life, no doubt.
Yeah, I think so. He still talks about going to see South Park Bigger, Longer, Uncut when I sneaked him in, and I think he was about 10.
Oh dear.
It's like far too young.
He's quite a tall fellow though, isn't he, Rich?
We're all quite tall with my family, so yeah, that's what I said, is like, put this bucket of popcorn in front of your face and no one will realise you're 10 because you're like nearly 6 foot tall already.
See, I was always tiny and looked really young, so I had absolutely no hope of that. I had to, still carry ID till I was like 22.
Yeah, I had the same problem. I went into Blade when I wasn't 18 and it was an 18, and that was a big day for me. I felt really I thought it'd be really hard to get in, but it wasn't. They just sold me the ticket and I was like, okay, that was not the event I thought it was going to be. I had this like backstory and like why I didn't have my ID and stuff, and then they're like, there's a ticket. I was like, oh, okay, do you know what
it's that easy.
Hear this? He didn't care at all. But
I never really had that problem because I was 6'6" and hairy by the time I was like 14.
Yeah,
so,
quite jealous of that.
Just sort of walked in.
So Was it? When did you see Last Crusade? Was that the cinema, or was that another VHS?
I think that was probably TV. Yeah,
Christmas.
because by that stage they were eventually coming to TV. As you know, it would take years sometimes, but I probably saw that on TV. But I have since seen it on the big screen. And I've been to a few of those events at the Royal Albert Hall with the live score.
Yeah,
Amazing.
wow. Yeah.
And when I moved to London in the 90s, it was in the early noughties, we were lucky enough to have a roof terrace in central London.
Wow.
And we weren't even supposed to go up there. Sorry, landlords. But we used to screen movies on a roof terrace because we had like a flat wall that you could screen them onto. And we did, I think we did Raiders of the Lost Ark then. And I felt like I was getting my childhood cinema experience that I hadn't had, with all my friends and popcorn and wine. And yeah, it's great.
I love the wine bit.
The wine, of course.
That makes it a little bit more adult.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yes, I don't think I'd have had wine at the age of 10. No.
Plus, cinemas didn't sell alcohol at that point. That seems to be.
I didn't think they did they?
No,
did they?
No, they
my one did. My one had a bar. Mine was a converted theatre, the one in my town, and it still had you go upstairs and there was a bar, and then there was an upstairs kind of cinema, and then downstairs were two smaller screens.
That must have been
It's like a
very
proper
popular with the
1930s
parents,
kind of.
taking their kids to
My dad used to quite like going to the cinema.
All of a sudden, yeah.
Yeah.
First question. Actually, it's the second question, stupidly. What is your best ever sequel?
My best ever sequel is, of course, Back to the Future 2.
Fantastic.
And
Great
has no one picked this one before?
Someone has picked it as their worst sequel.
What? Who's this
Yeah.
person? I need to hunt them down and have a big argument with them. Who is it?
It is Tom Davis from the Proper Mental
Okay.
podcast. A lovely man.
Very lovely man. Very spurious views on Back to the Future too.
Yeah, he's very much mistaken, as I'm sure you will agree.
I yes, but he argued it so well. By the end of the conversation, I was like, "You're right. This is a bad film," and I love Back to the Future too. So hopefully, you're going to bring me back around to the
Well,
line.
yes, let me try to do that. I'm sure we'll be agreeing. Back to the Future 2 is fantastic for lots of reasons. I mean, one of them is obviously it was planned at the same time as the first film, so it's very organically part of the series without being one of those hastily shot after a successful movie sequels. It's also obviously flagged at the end of the first film, so it feels really seamless. They even did an amazing job of replacing some of the cast when they had to. But more than anything, I think what I admire about this sequel is the way that it weaves the plot of the first one into the second one in such a hugely enjoyable way. So as to serve and be respectful to the plot of the original film, but also embroider it to elaborate on it in some ways, I think, arguably improve on it, or at least make it more exciting, because you've still got the essence of everything that makes Back to the Future great. And you've got extra thrills, you've got extra action, you've got extra attention, there's extra peril, there's more sci-fi, if you like, there's hoverboards, no, exactly, more inventions, you name it. So it just offers so much bang for your buck. But I think that the story is very, very clever. I love the idea. I mean, of course, that's one of the reasons that I love time travel movies in general. Possibly, started by Back to the Future, but also probably by children's books before that. I was always into kids' books where they travel through time. But I think one of the great things about that is conceit, is that there's so much you can do and continue to do with this concept, which is why it works really well for series of books or TV series as well. So, there was so much they could have done with Back to the Future too. But I love the idea that they decided to go into, to create a dystopian parallel timeline, as well as going into a slightly less scary future. So you've got the joy, you've got the fun of the future and the comedy of the future of this kind of crazy scenario he finds himself in, and then the comedy of him being somewhat dejected to see the man he's going to become, which is actually quite a lot of pathos in that, I think. And and then I think you to have the dystopian timeline injects a lot of darkness in there, which isn't in the first movie, and doesn't make it as suitable for young children. But to me, as a then probably teenager, I was pretty excited to see it go in a more grown-up direction and tackle some of the darkness in the characters like Biff, because Biff was, of course, generally, I mean, he is always had a dark side and a horrible abusive side, but we saw a lot more of that in the second one. And I think to explore that and to make him a real enemy to grapple with, especially as you've got two Biffs in, you've got three Biffs in this film, right? Of different timelines. And there's parallel timeline. So you've got the grandfather, old Biff in the future, and you've got the young Biff in the 50s. And then you've got the parallel timeline. So you've actually got four, haven't you? Because you've got the normal timeline in the 80s, and then you've got the parallel one. So there's probably at least four Biffs. Someone can probably write in and go, there's maybe five. But a lot of Biffs for your buck here. And I just think Lorraine also gets quite an interesting character arc in this one, even though she's very, Marty's mum, even though she's obviously quite a tragic figure in this. I think there's something really poignant about the idea that she's been forced to marry this horrendous man and only stays with him to avoid him, slinging her son in jail or similar. And it's quite dark and poignant, but it's also really, really fun with great action scenes at the beginning, very amusing predictions of the future, some of which have come quite true. And then, of course, we can't ignore the parallel with what happened with Donald Trump.
I was going to say, Biff is very Trump-esque, isn't he? Living in his tower. Yeah.
I think that was a deliberate move at the time. And little did the filmmakers know that he was going to go on to run America itself, not just Hill Valley. And that's, I think, made rewatching it recently more poignant again. Right. But I could go on. It's a fantastically entertaining film, and I think it does everything that a sequel should do.
You said at the start that it was kind of planned to go. I always thought that like Christopher Lloyd had come up with the line off the top of his head is like, "It's your kids, Marty. It's about your kids." And then they were like, "Okay, we're going to make it about his kids then."
Well, you may be right.
Kind of off the cuff. I don't know if that's true. That's just what I'd always kind of believed.
I remember listening to the audio commentary or whatever, and it said they wish they never put that line in the end of Back to the Future because it pinned them into a corner that they now have to come up with a story about. It's their kids.
Your kids, Marty.
But it's the best. It's the best one because it's taking the best bits of Back to the Future 1, and then we've got future Back to the Future. You've got Flying DeLorean. You've got hoverboards. I think it's magical.
Agree. And so, I stand corrected. So, he refers to it, and then they make the second two at the same time. 2 and 3, they film together.
Back to back.
But, it works so brilliantly, don't you think? I'm glad you agreed, Dave. Have I talked you around?
Oh, it was always Dave's favourite. Dave picked it as we did a list of our sequels that are better than their originals, and Dave picked it in that as better than the original. I'm not sure I agree. I like the original more, but
I've had some very animated sort of conversations with critics in pubs about this very matter. And, because I perhaps mainly being a bit controversial, I used to say exactly that it's better than Back to the Future. I'm slightly on the fence about that now because Back to the Future is a near perfect film in itself. But I think that does make Back to the Future 2 the perfect sequel in the way that it pays homage to the first one.
Absolutely. It's a great sequel. I don't agree with Tom. And
Good. None of us do. Sorry, Tom. Don't know you, but you're on.
Well, I think we're going to put your episodes on together so we can have a juxtaposition.
So you said earlier that Back to the Future was probably the first film you really got excited about in the cinema. And when you heard this was coming, were you like, just give it to me now? I need more Marty McFly.
Oh, completely. Because we haven't even said how incredible Michael J. Fox is in these films. He's just...
Oh, I love Michael. It's so cool.
He's the guy you want to date, or he's the boy you want to be, whichever it is. Or kind of in a way, the person you want to be. To me, even as a woman, you aspire to be that cool and have this kind of smart comments, but also very likable and very warm and hanging out with an eccentric prof and things that softened him a bit, So, God, do you know this tragic thing? I can't remember when I first saw Back to the Future 2 because I have seen it so many times. It's just kind of then blurred in my mind. But of course, I think because I saw Back to the Future on the TV, I was already aware there was a sequel maybe by that time. So I probably saw it quite soon afterwards, and just could not get enough of it.
Yeah.
Did you play that to your friends in your flats when you moved into London?
Yes, we did indeed. Yes, yeah, and got all the box sets. Yeah, I'm a sucker for any merch. I'm not normally a merch person, but if they bring out a different version of something, I'm like, oh, I'm all over it. When I actually went on Sky News because I do a lot of punditry on TV. I went on Sky News on Back to the Future Day. Do you remember when it was the very day?
Yeah.
And I'm on a couple of, and BBC as well. I think I'm on a couple of things talking about it, because they wanted that fun story, like, oh, what came true, And I remember telling one of the news announcers, oh, I'm actually having a themed party tonight for Back to the Future too. It's fancy dress. And she goes, oh, send us some pictures. So I did. And then she retweeted them and it was all a thing. But yeah, we all dressed up and I had several costume changes of different characters as the night went on. Yeah, of course.
Obviously.
Brilliant.
Not to be outdone.
Where did you start?
I started with Marty, the young Marty McFly of the future with the cap. I've got one of those like kind of reflective caps that he's got. And then I moved on to Lorraine, tragic Lorraine with the enormous boobs in the black dress. And the wine. And I can't remember if I did another one after that. My husband was the Doc, and that was brilliant. And then we had some friends that actually came as the Clock, which was really good.
Oh, that's a good shout.
I'll send you the pictures if you want for your socials. It might be fun.
Yeah.
I like dress ups of like objects instead of people. We talked about Indiana Jones earlier. I once went to a fancy dress party as Indiana Jones, and my girlfriend at the time went as the Boulder.
Wow.
That seems like the wrong way round.
It's definitely the wrong way round. That's what made it funny, because I'm massive and she was tiny. It was great.
Brilliant. I want to see pictures of that too, please.
Oh, I'll have to dig those out.
So what things have come true from Back to the Future 2 that there's no hoverboards as far as I know.
I think that it's never been used stories. I mean, obviously they're not being used, but I think people have invented them, but that you can't buy them at the corner shop. Well, they predicted that 3D would be very big. And that is true, I would say. Even though it was sort of an in-joke with Jules.
Is it 2015 they go forward to? Is it 2015?
No, see, now I've forgotten. I've failed.
17?
I feel like it's 17, but I'm going to Google it as we speak.
I've got a pair of trainers that are like the
It is 2015, you're right.
2015.
Oh, Rich,
Coming up to the time that we're speaking to each other right now, in fact. 21st of October. Yeah. So the trainers...
You've got a pair of the trainers, haven't you, Dave?
I know, I've got a pair that kind of look similar. I can't afford the ones they released because they did a limited run of these Nike pair that they auctioned off for Michael J. Fox's charity, the Self, and they went for silly money and they all lit up. But they're just a pair of Nike Jordans and they look very similar, and they give me a little bit extra height, so I love them. They're my favourite pair of trainers.
I had a similar thing that I bought these silver trainers, and I realised the entire reason I bought them because they looked like the twos from Back to the Future. And well, the microwaving stuff is quite
kind of true.
It's kind of true. You don't put a tiny little thing into the microwave, and then we definitely don't have faxes as much as they thought we might. Female cops, that was good, but I kind of dislike the way the female cops looked like models in this film. Actually, just had a bit of an issue with that. And I do have some feminist issues with the Back to the Future series as well, but I won't elaborate on them now. But you can see.
No, go for it. You can.
Well, I mean, I did a big feature in The Guardian some years ago. I think it's 2013 about why can't women time travel? And it's in so many TV series and in particular films. There are exceptions, of course, but in particular films, it's the man that gets to travel.
Yeah.
And poor Rachel McAdams, I think now 4 times, has been left on the sidelines while her man does time travel, twisty things. So I felt a bit sorry for Jennifer in Back to the Future in the way that she's kind of knocked out as soon as she gets to the future. Oh, she can't be trusted. Let's dose her up.
Jennifer
Not too happy with that.
Far the more intelligent character out of her and Marty.
Yeah,
she's definitely the better person to time travel. Really,
That's why you wouldn't have a film because she'd just be too smart and suss everything out. Not steal an almanac and create a parallel tie line. But I think Lorraine is a saving grace in the series, even though there are some issues with her, but especially in Back to the Future. I think she's such a fantastic character and she really knows what she wants and she goes for it. Even if she's...
Yeah, because people really grab onto that storyline, don't they? The whole mothered something. And
Yeah,
they
Edith
can't. They read.
also.
I think they think. Yeah, I think they read too much into it. Sometimes they really dive into it, which is ridiculous. I always had a. What's the actress's name? I've forgotten her.
Leah Thompson.
I had a massive crush on her when I was young. Probably
Oh,
like
you
you.
did?
And
Like
I would
Martin
imagine
as well.
that any teenage boy watching that, or whatever boy watching that, would, because she's so like over the top flirtatious, isn't she? And I remember like reading about her saying she had to summon this horny energy every day, but she really comes across, she's smoking on screen. It's amazing.
It's a great film, and the music's all really good.
Oh.
Were you happy how it ended, as in gone into 3? And how do you feel about Back to the Future 3?
I liked the way that it led up to the next film and created a sense of excitement, like, oh my God, I can't wait to see what happens in the 3. I'm not a huge fan of the Western genre, even if it's quite spoofy like this. So I was less excited to see that setting. And of course, we all know it's slightly the lesser of the 3. But do you know what? It's still a really good film. It's very entertaining. It follows a lot of the same beats as the other films, obviously. So there's a lot for fans. There's a lot of kind of little Easter eggs for fans all over it, and it is exciting. And you do have a good female character in that one, School Mistress Clara, and she's probably the woman with among the most agency in any Back to the Future film. So yeah,
That's
pretty
kind of what I
good.
like about 3. Is the fact that she sort of knows what to do. Because what gets me in Hollywood movies is that the woman often says to the man and goes, "Oh my God, what should we do now?" And I'm like, that never happens in real life. It's always the men turning to their wives and going, "What do we do?"
Yeah, especially in this household. Yeah.
Well, that's right. And she is the one, she's the smart one, really, in that one, isn't she? And
Yeah.
actually, unlike Back to the Future 2, where Jennifer gets knocked out, she gets listened to and actually plays a part in her own rescue, I think you could say broadly, or at least her kind of escape and her, and she's, and in the kind of science of it all, she's a big part of that, which is progress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're a 1, 2, 3 kind of person.
Probably, but it's between 1 and 2 and then 3. Almost 50-50, depending on the mood. I think that's what makes them geniuses, that they complement each other perfectly, and they are on a par.
And it's it's nearly a perfect trilogy, isn't it? There's not many of them out there. Me and Rich found that out a few weeks ago when we did some extra episodes.
There's always one letdown in the trilogy.
Yeah, exactly. You think you're on a run with The Godfather, and then, oh no.
Oh,
yeah. So yeah, I think it's as close. I don't know. Did you find a better one? I haven't listened to all your past episodes, forgive me.
I went Lord of the Rings and Star Wars.
Whoa. Star Wars
I
is,
thought-
that's quite a good chat.
Yeah, I don't think I found a better. Well, I don't know. I
can't actually
deliberately picked
remember.
ones that Dave didn't pick, so mine aren't actually the best. I think
Right.
mine was Nolan Batman. I think was my.
Oh,
top
also
pick.
good. Yeah, I like what you're
But
saying.
then the third one does kind of let it down again.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, I think it should be in there.
I have to ask the questions about there's always a rumoured Back to the Future 4 or a remake. How would you can't do a 4 now. I think it's too late, sadly, with Michael J. Fox's disease. Would you have liked to seen it at some point in the last, since 3? And if they remade it, how would you feel about that?
I would feel very skeptical about any of those things happening, because it would be such a shame to not necessarily ruin, but to taint the near perfect franchise, a near perfect trilogy. It would be such a shame to either remake it, because let's face it, it is never going to be as good, or, as you say, to do a sort of sequel. Didn't Christopher Lloyd say he'd like to do one set in Roman times? That's
Yeah, I think so.
quite intriguing.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I don't know. That wouldn't have been my favorite thing. I'd have liked to see more into the future again, but I'm kind of future girl.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm quite glad that they haven't done it.
Yeah.
Me too.
Because legacy sequels, they're so hot right now, and they're
We don't need one for this, Dave. They're not often good, though, are they? Legacy
no,
sequels.
they're
Top
not.
Gun Maverick is the exception. Like,
That's true. That is. They could do it as well as that, but then Back to the Future is an even better film than Top Gun. So hard. Fighting talk.
I think I agree with you. I think Back to the
Okay.
Future is better than Top Gun, but Dave
I
might
think
not.
I agree with you. No, I think I do. They're both really up there for me. Big films in my life. What is your favourite scene from Back to the Future 2? We'll end on this. What's your favourite moment?
Gosh. I think actually, there's so many, but I think actually this, when they go back to 1955 and you see everything from the first film play out from a different perspective. And it's so clever and they've included so many little details from the first one, and the attention to detail is phenomenal in this.
It's amazing.
They've thought about it so hard, and it's like you're peeking around the corner. It's like you are time traveling. It's taking you on a journey, and you are time traveling because you're seeing what you've seen before, but from a different perspective. So it's really exciting. So I just say when he starts going back into the Enchantment Under the Sea dance, and things play out a bit differently, and he sees his old self, that is just the most exciting moment. Yeah.
Yeah. If you didn't know, you would think they would film them together, didn't you?
Oh God, yeah. And even the prosthetics they use for the the replacement actor is just you hardly notice it.
Yeah,
you
it's
don't
amazing.
notice
It's amazing.
Crispin Glover's not there, do you? Really,
Yeah.
I didn't
very clever.
realise until somebody said when we were doing this podcast that Crispin Glover isn't in it. I was like, yeah, I'm sure he is, and he isn't.
It's so clever.
It's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Just a man in prosthetics, isn't it? You're trying to do a...
Yeah, it's another
An
actor
impression of
in
him.
prosthetic, but he does a really good job. You can't
Yeah.
hardly see the joints.
Who needs Crispin Glover?
Yeah.
He seems to get ever angry on every set he was on, I think.
Well, I think he's a fantastic actor, I should say. But yeah, they did a good job. Yeah,
Oh, we're leading you down a dark way
yeah.
now.
Don't slag off
worry.
Crispin Glover.
Well, I was listening to a podcast about, Charlie's Angels earlier, and he just refused to say the lines they were meant to say, and he would just shout them. And the director was like, "Oh, just go with
I'm
it."
not sure you can ruin Charlie's Angels any more than they did that anyway. So
I don't know. I
don't
quite
think it
like the
matters
first
what
one.
he did.
The sequel is horrible.
I quite like the first one too. But yeah.
Yeah, Rich. Next question. Before we get on to the worst sequel,
Yes.
what is the most disappointing sequel? So this is the question I was like, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed.
Oh gosh.
So it doesn't have to be bad. It's one you probably went in really hypes, told all your friends about, dragged loads of people to go and see it, and then you had to apologise afterwards. Yes, this was an experience I had.
I mean, not that Mamma Mia was an amazing film, but it did what it did really, really well. And I think the sequel did not live up to expectation. I think it was sad to see some of that magic being replaced by something which felt even more too formulaic, just too much. It felt like a little bit of a cash in. And why I want to mention that one is just that quite often you find with successful female directed films, the sequel is then given to a male director. I interviewed Twilight's Catherine Hardwicke many years ago, and she made that very point herself, because she, of course, had a successful film and then subsequent.
It's the best
versions.
Twilight as
yeah,
well,
exactly.
the first one.
Were given to men. And I think, I was actually trying to think how many women have directed sequels. That's very few. I mean, if you count... obviously you've got Wonder Woman 1984, and that's tremendous. I really like that. That was great. Black Widow, does that count? Birds of Prey, does that count? Do we count these ones?
I would count Birds of Prey, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think we'd probably count Black Widow, because it's a sort of sequel prequel, isn't it?
Well, in that case, it's happening more. But I've probably forgotten some ancient, little gem from the past.
You've hit on one of the things that I really hate about sequels is whenever there's a successful one, they change the director for the second one. It always kind of makes me feel a bit icky, and especially when it's a successful female director, I don't see why why would you change? Why change a winning formula?
Exactly. I know there's lots of politics involved, and sometimes they just can't retain people, but I know it's very clear that quite often it is a decision.
Yeah.
That they, for some reason, it needs to be given to someone who can really get the crowds in, because it's such a hot property now. And I'm sorry, a woman just directed that really successful film. Why would you give it to someone else? Yeah.
Who directed the first one then?
Philida, I'm going to get this for you. Of Mamma Mia, we're talking about.
Yeah, because it was the second was Ollie Parker.
Yeah,
wasn't
that's
it?
right. It was who did the stage play. So it was Philida Lloyd. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't lie to you. I've never seen Mamma Mia 2.
No, I haven't actually, but I quite enjoyed the first one.
No, I can't get through it.
No,
I've finished it. It's not for me. ABBA, yeah, really grinds my gears.
Well, then, yeah, it's definitely not for you.
Definitely
Let's
not for you
face it.
then.
That was always going to happen. Yeah.
If you can put up with kind of awful singing by various male cast members, then I think you're all right. You can get through it. Yeah, Pierce Brosnan's bad. Colin Firth's pretty bad.
Yeah, but they did it with such, and I normally hate bad singing, but they did it with such a sort of wry sense of humour and a kind of apologetic hangdog air that you just sort of let them off.
I like
really.
it, and I really don't like musicals very much, and I like it. So There you go,
Yeah.
Dave. You're wrong.
It makes, what is it, Catalonia or one of the Greek islands look
Yeah,
beautiful.
it looks nice. Yeah.
All the cast are very good. I like. It's just ABBA, isn't it? And then they said they're going to do an ABBA 2, and I was like, you can keep that. No one's picked it yet, Anna. So
Okay.
when someone does, I'll watch it.
Yeah. I think they actually filmed that one in Croatia in Split, the second one. But I actually went there to see the location, which was very lovely trip.
Wow.
But yeah, no, it is meant to be set on a Greek island. That's the general idea. Yeah.
So how high were your expectations going in? What did you
For
think
Mamma
was
Mia
coming?
2? They weren't high. I'm not going to lie, they weren't high. I went to the premiere as well, and my friends
Right.
and I, we both wore sort of denim ABBA-ish jumpsuits and we had champagne, so it was a lovely, it wasn't like I was crushed or expecting it to be amazing. And I will say that there is a very moving scene in that, actually, with involving Meryl Streep. That is very, very, very good. So it wasn't terrible. It wasn't up there with the first one. But I could handle it. It wasn't like I was crying tears of disappointment.
That is
and
a perfect answer to this question as well, I would say.
Oh, thanks.
Like, it's because it's not, you don't want to be like coming out of it going, oh well, that's an awful movie, it's the worst I've ever seen. You come out and you go, oh, I'm just a bit disappointed. That's...
Yeah, because I never like to go in with high expectations anyway. As a film critic, I think you owe it to every film just to go in with an open mind and not not expect it to be as good as the first one or whatever you think it might be. Just try not to think anything. So that's why I was slightly struggling to think of an example for this. And it's not that I hated the film at all. I just didn't love it as much as the first one. Yeah.
Do you find like a lot of sequels are disappointing?
Yeah, I guess so. Generally, I mean, I would say you guys are finding that doing this great podcast, aren't you?
Yeah, we are. We're definitely. There's definitely a lot more bad ones than there are good ones.
Yeah.
When you do find a good one, though, it's great.
Oh, yeah, and it's such a treat. It's such a treat for a fan, isn't it? If you're a proper fan of something, it's like that's the best present that you can get is an amazing sequel.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Like if you loved the first Lord of the Rings, then you go and watch Two Towers, you're like, oh, lovely.
Whereas I'm like, oh God, no, not more.
I think Lord of the Rings is a brilliant, like, you either love it or you absolutely hate it. There's kind of a brilliant measure of whether are you a Star Wars person or a Lord of the Rings person.
I think you can be both.
I think you could also be neither, actually, saying that.
Yeah, that's true. That's
also
true.
I like how you were talking a second ago, because I read a Black Adam review today, and they said if you go in with the right mindset, you're going to like it. I was like, I don't know what that means, because you should just go in going, okay, I think I'm going to enjoy this, or let's see what happens. I don't know what they mean, go in with the right mindset. Like, is that mindset going, okay, I think this is going to be terrible, so it's going to be good?
Yes, it's interesting that you say that, because as a critic, it's quite often tempting to fall back on those sort of phrases, and then you think, I try to check myself going, what does that really mean? I mean, not saying I haven't written it in the past, but what does that really mean? I think I like to qualify it. And if I'm writing about something that's saying, if you go in aware that it's going to be really gory or whatever it is, kind of a slight sort of warning, or if you go in not expecting it to be as good as the original, for example.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can be surprised, I guess.
Yeah. Sometimes it's good to have very low expectations. Sometimes if people have told me the film's shit, and I go in and I quite like it, I'm like, oh.
Can you name an example out of
They
interest?
didn't ask me that, can't remember.
Yeah, you shouldn't have brought it up.
I should know that you're going to ask me a follow-up question there. Yeah, no.
Let's go on to the worst, because this is the one we've all been waiting for, I think.
Oh, yes.
What is the worst sequel you've ever seen?
Basic Instinct 2.
Such a good choice. It's so bad.
I'm glad you approve. And are you happy that I made you watch it? Had you seen it before?
I'd seen it before.
Yeah.
I'd blocked it from my memory clearly because I couldn't remember it. I watched it and I was like, have I seen this? But I definitely had. It's awful. It's made for TV awful, if not even that good. Made for TV in the 90s maybe.
It doesn't feel like a film that was released out in 2006. It feels much earlier than that. I had the pleasure of seeing this once before as well, and I thought it was awful then. And then we tried to find copies to watch, and Rich
couldn't find it anywhere. I had to buy it on eBay.
in the UK, they don't want you to see this film.
Which makes it all the more of a great choice, doesn't it? Because it's like the film they try to erase from existence because it's so bad.
It's so
and
bad.
You seek out your cheeky little DVD copy. But yeah, it's just, I mean, it was the sequel that no one asked for, because a film like Basic Instinct does not need a sequel. I'm certainly not saying Basic Instinct is the best film in the world, far from it. But it was successful. It had a certain, tone and atmosphere which was consistent. Sharon Stone was tremendous in it. It became a bit of a cult watch, even if it was sometimes, whether or not it was meant to be a spoof in parts, it was hard to tell, but it certainly had that kind of erotic 90s thriller energy,
Quite of
which
its
was
time,
much imitated. And that's the trouble, partly that it was of its time. And then also, you had too long of a gap between, the sequel and people trying to sort of figure out, how could we possibly replicate this? But also trying to, after having a perfectly good ambiguous ending, then trying to kind of elaborate on that by having Catherine Tremell come to London, which, much as I love London and I live here, seems like a bit of a come down in a way. And it sort of seems symbolise the move, the downward trend in this series. And I'm really sad that this is co-written by the writer of Desperately Seeking Susan, because that is one of the best films that I've ever seen, and we celebrate that a lot on Girls on Film. But she's a co-writer for this, and I'm not going to blame her. I'm not going to blame the director, because he'd spoken out about. He knew it was going to be appalling from the word go. He's as good as said that he knew it was a disaster on set. So
he just needed money, didn't he? He just wanted,
and it was
he needed a job.
Neil Morrissey, not the greatest choice for this. I
love that you
David
called him
Morrissey. Neil Morrissey. I always get those two wrong. Neil Morrissey would have been better, right?
Neil Morrissey would have been amazing. He'd have been.
I mean, the cast is really good, right?
David Morrissey, Basic Men Behaving Badly.
You say the cast's really good, Dave. It's sort of on a downward slope, isn't it? You've got Sharon Stone, good. Yeah, David Morrissey, okay. David Thewlis, very good. Like even like some of the supporting cast, like Neil Maskell, very
Neil Maskell,
good.
Yeah.
And then Stan Collymore, like really?
Oh, that is a surprise. How did that happen?
It's just such a weird, random selection of things, and like I say, it just no blame to anyone, because you can't blame people for trying to cash in on it, but it just felt like it exemplified everything that the first film actually did right by doing it wrong, by just kind of trying to be sexy, but in a sort of really
not sexy.
Yeah, in a real pantomime way, and
it's horrible.
Yeah, and
every line is
really
delivered like it's a Naked Gun line.
Yeah, it is. It's like a spoof.
Yeah.
It's got the worst kind of most awkward, horrible like orgy scene thing. That's it's just awful. It's just no.
Yeah.
I think we've got to go down the road of when you first saw this. Was it like a screening? Please tell me it was a screening.
Oh God, I wish I could come up with another example of seeing something on the big screen. But once again, I'm pretty sure I managed to dodge that bullet in terms of reviews. And I think we rented it at home just to
just to laugh
shits
at
and
it.
giggles, just to go, okay, we got to check this out, see if it's as bad as they say. And sure enough, it was. But yeah, no, I wish I could tell you a great story about being at the screening for that, but I can't.
Talking of reviews, Dave, the quote on the front of that DVD cover, I think it's
as mesmerising as the original.
That's a lie.
Who says that? Who said
the
that?
Sun, apparently.
It's the Sun.
I mean, that's quite obviously a lie.
Yeah.
I did read researching it earlier that Mark Commode gave it positive reviews, though.
No.
I saw that. Yeah. He likes to be contrary occasionally. But, I'm not saying he did. He totally believed it, obviously. But
they take a swing at a few things, but none of it lands.
Yeah.
It's really, really horrible. And this one is also just Basic Instinct 2, no : risk addiction.
Right. Oh, yeah, because that's this little
the
subhead,
risk
isn't
addiction
it?
thing.
Yeah, because that's such a weird, COD psychology plot that she's supposedly addicted to risk, but then, spoiler alert, she manages to convince him that he's mad or...
Can we talk about the ending? You probably you don't know how recently you've watched it, but Rich, what the fuck's going on?
No, don't ask. I've got a clue, mate. I mean, basically, it loses all of the kind of questioning for the first one. Is she a killer? Is she not? What's going on? In the second one, it kind of overtly says, you know, I'm a bad person who's messing with you, like, and I've twisted this guy. You're supposed to not know if she's a baddie or not, basically, aren't you? And that's not the case with this one. Like, she's either a murderer, a mass murderer, a serial killer, or she's a horrible person who's, you know, messed up someone's life for the hell of it. You know, either way, she's bad. In the first one, I mean, Michael Douglas is an awful character in the first one, and
He's
kind
a
of
horrible
deserves
human
it.
being, yeah.
But I'm not sure that David Morrissey particularly deserves it in this one, other than he's quite up himself, I would say. She's maybe bringing him down a peg or two. But yeah, it's Sharon Stone should sort of be the anti-hero rather than the villain, and she's very much the villain, I think, in this one.
Yeah, there's no texture, there's no layers at all. Yeah.
No.
Oh, she plays like Cruella de Vil.
She does, yeah.
Straight out bad guy. There's no hiding. Like,
And also,
are we meant
Exactly.
to like this character at all anymore?
I know she wasn't comfortable with the first one as well. I think they kind of tricked her a little bit into doing some of the scenes, and I don't know. I wonder how comfortable she would have been with this one as well, because it's quite gratuitous in quite a number of places.
I wonder how she feels about it. I mean, this will get me onto another feminist topic, which is how hard it is for women of a certain age in Hollywood to find roles, even if they look as phenomenal
Even
as
if they look incredible,
and act
yeah.
as phenomenally as Sharon Stone. You know, I wish that she'd had loads of other offers of great things. I mean, she did go on to do some great things, but I wish she'd had more, so she didn't have to make this film, quite frankly.
I think this it really didn't help when this and Catwoman came out pretty much back to back, if I remember rightly. That's not a good 1-2 punch. I've just realised we watched the uncut version.
Oh, did we?
Saucy or not?
Not really.
I don't know.
I can't remember.
I've never seen the original. More Stan Collymore?
It tries far too hard to be sexy, I think, is
That's
the
the
problem.
trouble. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it just isn't. Like, there's just nothing about it. Like, my wife was laughing at me, going, "Oh, you're basically watching porn," and I was like, "It's really not sexy. It's so awful."
Yeah, it's kind of skin crawlingly desperate to be sexy, isn't it? Yeah,
it is. Yeah, absolutely. It's really creepy.
I do remember that. I think the Gherkin just been built in 2005. They love that building.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they use that a lot.
They used it as many times as they possibly
That's
can.
kind of what I was thinking. Is that his David Morrissey's character's a psychotherapist essentially, and his office is in the Gherkin. I was
He
like,
must do really
no
well. business.
way! Like, come on.
Do you know who I feel sorry in this film is Charlotte Rampling, who just looks confused through the whole film.
I'm not surprised. I'd be confused if I was in this film as well, I think.
I think it's cool that they got her in it, but yeah, I don't think they made the most of that situation. No.
I don't think they realised who they had.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. And she's supposed to be kind of like the sane one, isn't she? And she's the reasonable person in this movie. And then that all gets twisted, and yeah, she, like you say, she just looks confused.
The big ending when everyone's telling everyone what they've done, and she's just in the middle looking. I was like, I'm with her.
She's the audience. She's the cipher. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a sequel. It's a bad sequel. How do you move on from this? Like, because I reckon they would think, if this does well, we're going to have a third one.
They were wrong, to think this would do well. Do you think anyone thought this would do well?
Sharon Stone got paid like 14 million to do
Well,
this.
yeah, she needed to, mate, because
I mean, and it's made no money apparently. But is there a world where they thought we can really spit out a few more Basic Instincts? And is there a world where that would work now?
Yeah, because I mean, I do feel like there's been a little bit of a revival of the erotic thriller recently.
I mean, 50 Shades dabbled. with that
Yeah, it
scene.
did. Not particularly well, in my opinion.
Again, there's another woman director in the first one taken away.
Exactly. Very good example. Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like, I mean, it would have to be done very, very differently. And I think, yeah, I'm going to be predictable here and say if you gave it to a female writer director and you shot it more from the point of view of the woman, that could offer an interesting contrast. If you just still try to go down the same old road of titillation for man in a very basic way, then what's the point? Because there's porn around now, for example, which there wasn't as much porn readily available on the internet when the first one came out, and I think that's a big factor of why that the genre sort of dwindled away a bit. I think it would be interesting to see that. Like, I think The Last Seduction is one of the best examples of this kind of genre, and better than Basic Instinct. I'd like to have seen a sequel to that, in fact, but I didn't choose that today. But I think when they started making this film, they must have thought that it was a winner. Otherwise, why would they plow money into it? But it sounds like by the time it even got to the shoot, everyone was acknowledging this. Oh God, let's just finish this thing and be done with it.
It's an extraordinary read to read about this film, because they're trying to make it for years, and at one point Sharon Stone was already suing the producers, and then finally they worked out a deal. So you've got to ask, and I think she got a pay or play deal. So it was either she get paid a lot of money, yeah. So I don't know if her heart was really into it at that point, and I think it shows on screen.
Yeah.
A lot. If you remember, can you remember your worst scene?
Oh, I think because unlike you, I failed to get the DVD. I haven't seen it since just after
You're
it came
very
out.
welcome to have our copy.
Thanks. Well, I'll watch it again and come back to you. But I think I've made. I was sitting in an airport when I was answering your question about what's the worst sequel, and it popped right into my head because
it's on my list.
Apart from Sex and the City 2, which you'd already done, which of course is actually the worst. But Basic Instinct 2, I just remember it being an excruciating experience overall, and I could just I see lots of images of her trying to be sexy in the way that the first film was. It's like people trying to, if you've done something really successful in your life and then you try to mimic it and repeat it, it doesn't always have the magic of the first time, and it felt like that. It just felt like she's going over the same ground. Yeah, how can something so sexual be so dull? But that's quite an achievement.
Yeah,
it's an amazing achievement. Yeah, Rich, what's your favorite scene? What's your worst scene?
Well, I think I already mentioned it. The horribly awkward orgy where David Morrissey's spying on them from a grubby kind of like a skylight. Like, Soho, I don't even understand why. I don't get any of it. Like, it's all terrible, but that is especially terrible. Yeah, that's the worst, definitely.
My worst scenes are the one-on-ones in his office.
Oh, they are. Yeah, that's true. They're toe-curlingly bad, aren't they?
It's a film I never want to see again now. I think...
Sorry again.
No.
I think Sex and the City 2 is worse.
Sex and the City 2 is worse. I enjoyed
but
it
in a different
way. Because Sex and the City 2 is more offensive.
Yes.
By a long way. I mean, this is just bad. I haven't watched it recently, but correct me if I'm wrong, it's not going out to be overtly racist or offensive in that way, in the way, the extraordinary way that Sex and the City 2 was. Even for its time, if you want to say that, absolutely appalling. And I hated that film so much, I actually started an anonymous Twitter account called Why Sex and the City 2 Sucks, and I did 69 posts of why it sucked. You can go and see it; it's still there on Twitter, and Brilliant. I refer you to that.
I very nearly had to watch Sex and the City 2 for no reason, because one of our guests picked it and then changed their mind after I'd watched it, and I was like, "No, how can I have watched this for no reason?" And then we were so lucky that someone else chose it.
At least this was reasonably short compared to Sex and the City 2. 109 minutes.
Yeah, that's true. Still too long though, Dave.
If that's the one thing in its favour, then that's not great, is it?
Mercifully short, but still too long.
That's a new poster quote. Mercifully short.
It's awful. I don't want to promote another podcast too much. We're talking about this one, but there's a podcast called The Sequelizers, and the guys on there take bad sequels and then make them better. And the Basic Instinct 2 one is probably my favourite. They do a really good job of pitching a really good sequel to Basic Instinct.
Oh, great!
I listened to it and I was like, I would watch that.
What year did they set it?
I think a couple of years after the first one, not 2006, that's for sure.
I don't think 2006 was a good point to release this.
It feels like a 90s movie, very much. I couldn't believe it when I saw it was 2006. I thought 96.
Would you put it in a category? It's so bad, it's good. Would you not even put it with those films?
No.
So there's no
not even
camp cliche like Prince Charles screenings, like woo, let's go and holler at like Sharon Stone's weird fringe and the bad dialogue and the David Morrissey doesn't say he had a bad time on this film, but it doesn't look like he's having a good time.
No.
No.
He really doesn't. It's when you were saying about the scenes between the two of them, I was remembering that was probably the most excruciating things, when these two people are meant to be having some kind of sexual connection and there's literally no chemistry at all, and they both look like they don't want to be anywhere else.
I've seen people have more chemistry with furniture between the two of them. It's awful.
Oh.
But no, it's definitely not so bad it's good, Dave. It's so bad it's bad. I mean, that's the
Agreed.
it's fully past the being anywhere near good thing.
We've got another question for you, and it's our Fast and Furious question, which is what I'm going to call it now. Is there a sequel that maybe you didn't enjoy the first one, maybe not even the second one, but you came back around to it at some point due to a later installment?
Not really. I'm just trying to think. Do you honest? No, I don't.
It's a hard
think
question.
So.
Yeah.
It is a hard question.
It's the
I would
hardest
have prepared for it
question.
and thought about it, but I honestly nothing springs to mind, because I think apart from the one I mentioned earlier, coming to Raiders after seeing Indiana Jones, I think I've gone the traditional route with most things, and I've been reviewing films now since the late 90s. So most things since then, I've obviously seen everything in succession. I think there haven't really been anything that surpassed the original. I mean, but I think
maybe it wouldn't be better than the original, but it might be like, so we used the Fast and Furious example because 5 is better than probably the 3 that are before it,
right?
And then like Mission Impossible is quite a good one because Mission Impossible 2 is awful, and then three's all right. 3's pretty good. I don't know if there's any kind of
the Planet of the Apes series, the newer ones, I think are absolutely terrific, and I think that made me sort of revisit the whole franchise. I know they're quite different. I mean, I think Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is a tremendous film. So I think those ones definitely reawakened my interest in the themes of that, given that some of the previous films had not been up to scratch. Yeah,
that's a perfect answer.
That's a really good answer. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. When you are sent to critique something, to do a review, and it's not a film you're excited about, how do you go into that? Like, are you like, oh, okay, or are you like, I'm going to give it a real crack? Say, if you're not really into superhero films, but you're sent to do another Marvel, but then you end up quite enjoying it. Are they easy reviews to write?
Well, I mean, luckily, there's no genre I hate. I've said I don't like Lord of the Rings, but I like something from every genre, be it horror, action, sci-fi, and that's very useful as a film critic. And I do like superhero movies. So there's not, it's not often that I would go in sort of thinking, oh God, I've got to do this one. The only ones that would be the case would be torture porn. Yeah. So something like the Saw series, Wolf Creek was probably the least fun I've had at my job. And, obviously I have a great job and I'm extremely lucky. I'm not complaining at all. But yes, things like that. I've actually got to the stage in my career now where I can just say, I'm not going to review that film because I'm not the best person to do that job, because I find those kind of films very difficult. And I do get to choose what I review as a rule now. It's not given to me by editors or producers. I do get to make the selection, which is great. So in fact, increasingly, I'm very lucky that because I have my own podcast and decide what to feature on there, and on TV, when I've had TV shows, I've decided what to feature on there. And when I write for Deadline and Time Out, and so we have a bit of a conversation about what I might like to review. It's not just like, you're doing this. So there are advantages to being quite long in the tooth and a bit of a veteran film critic, so that I never now actually have to go into a film that I really don't fancy.
Okay. Have you ever ruled yourself out from a film because you think you'd be too biased? Because if I could never review a Star Wars film because I would have Star Wars goggles on.
I don't think so, no. I understand what you're saying.
That's why I didn't make it.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying. I mean, there's definitely the conflict of interest thing you have to be aware of, because my husband's in visual effects. So if he's worked a lot on a film that I'm reviewing, I have to consider that, whether I'm compromised. But generally, I would say no. I can't think of a reason where I would have to declare myself unfit. No.
Okay. I do like to ask the question: how do you approach interviews with directors and people when you haven't liked the film? I mean, when you like the film, it must be easy because you're like, oh my God, I've got so much to talk to you about. I haven't got enough time. But what happens to the ones that you don't like?
I think there's always plenty to talk about. It is obviously easier when you're enthusiastic about the film. And once again, actually, I'm now at the stage where I'm never really required to interview anyone whose film I don't like. When I was doing a lot of interviews for Metro, obviously, numbers wise, it's going to be the case that some of them you don't like. But I think, I mean, I was normally interviewing the stars, which is easier. And B, the directors, it's about being very diplomatic. And luckily, I think I'm quite diplomatic. And tiny bit of acting.
What was your dream sequel?
So Booksmart is a film that I adore. It swept the board at the Girls on Film inaugural awards earlier this year or last year. And it really is, I think, ripe for a sequel because, number one, I think comedy sequels work really well because when you try to get some kind of deep plot about, from a drama or a sci-fi or an action film, the stakes are higher. I think it's probably quite not simple, but more manageable to get a great comedy because everything's relying on the characters and their interaction with each other and the kind of shorthand that you've developed with an audience who's got to know and love those characters. So I'd love to see Beanie Feldstein and Caitlin Dever come back together, whether it be because obviously the first one was set when they were just leaving school and they were having a great night out. And I was thinking about how I'd like Olivia Wilde to do this because I do think it should be Olivia Wilde once again. Let's not give this one to a guy, okay?
Yeah, yes.
Can you imagine
100%.
if they went, "Oh, bye Olivia, we're just going to get some dude to do this." But yeah, so if she does it with the same writer who's terrific, the obvious thing to do in a way would be to have them at university or college, as they call it. But then I thought, would it maybe be more interesting to do it in a few years down the line when they're in the workspace and some kind of interesting event brings them back together and probably some kind of form of tension because that's what people do when they write plays. But I just think those two, we had them on, I think, episode 14 of Girls on Film, and those two together are just dynamite and they're such good friends in real life and got on brilliantly. So the hope is that there wouldn't be any kind of Basic Instinct 2 kind of fallouts here, no frostiness here. And I just think, it also because this film didn't do as well as it should have. I'm sure you'll agree it's a tremendous film. And
it's incredible.
Amazing.
It's so good.
So funny, so charming, so heartwarming, so brilliant, so effortlessly strong in terms of representation. Great cast. Everything's right about this film. So this could be an example of if they did a smash hit sequel that did even better, then Booksmart would start getting more of the numbers that it deserved in the first place.
Absolutely, yeah. Rich never got to see this until I think Ashanti picked it in the last season, and he was like, "Thank you for that."
I love it so much. I really, really love it. And as a middle-aged man, I shouldn't be loving films about teenage girls, really. I don't think, but it's so good.
But that's the point. That's why it's so good, and I think that's for so often, we think that something depicting a certain demographic should only appeal to that demographic. That's not true. As a woman, I grew up being asked to identify with men in 90% of films, and I got used to it. So it's about time that we all got used to the idea of identifying with people that we're not the same as in real life. That's what cinema's about, right?
Yeah, definitely. You're absolutely right. I don't think there's a foot wrong with it. I don't think there's a step wrong in the whole film. It's so good, and I'm very excited to see. I know it's had a bit of a rough road, but I'm quite excited to see Olivia Wilde's next movie too. Because
Don't Worry, Darling.
Yes. Yeah, I haven't seen it. I'm excited to watch it.
Good.
And I don't care about all the nonsense.
Exactly. What a load of nonsense. And again, that's kind of gendered reporting, pitting women against each other. Let's focus on the fact that it is a very intriguing, very stylish, very atmospheric, and very sort of ripe for discussion movie with tremendous performances. There's a lot to like about that film, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts on it.
I can't wait to see it. Honestly, I'm really excited about it. And also, you're right about how gendered the reporting is on it, because there are so many male directors who are absolute awful dicks, and they don't get any of this. Yeah. You have to intensely Google how horrible people are Like, I couldn't believe it. Like,
yeah, and
all
it's
the-
been. I totally agree. And it's been reported like it's some kind of factual headline news when it's just a bit scurrilous
Yeah.
rumors about nothing very much, really.
Absolutely.
Speculative stuff. And what struck me is that a lot of reviews mentioned it. It wasn't just news reporting or gossip. A lot of reviews mentioned it. I thought, even the reviews of the latest Woody Allen often does not mention any kind of scandal. So how is this your entry point for a review of a feminist movie?
Yeah, I agree with you because David Russell just released another movie, and a lot of his stuff is getting swooped beneath the
He's basically human garbage, right? It's like...
That's we're spreading rumours now, Rich. Back to Booksmart.
Yeah, but they're believable rumours. Come on.
There are multiple stories. When you first saw it and you were excited, Olivia Wilde's directing it, and it's got this amazing cast, were you going in with really high hopes, or were you cool, level-headed?
I think I didn't know much about it, and I had high hopes, and I'm happy to say for once this was in a cinema on the big screen.
Yeah.
I think there was some kind of big VIP experience, and I took one of my dear friends interestingly, I didn't know the story of the film, but it's one of my dear friends. She's gay, and she came out to me when she was 14, and I'm straight, and so we had this like kind of shared relationship which was not unlike what we saw on screen. So we were just sitting there, with our popcorn and our cocktails going, wow, this is the best thing, because it's not only a great film, but we could see a bit of our lives reflected on it, and I just, it was a wonderful experience, and the audience were all laughing together. It was a true big screen gem, and then of course I've seen it many times on the small screen since then.
Yeah,
I'm really jealous that you saw it on the big screen. I regret that not knowing this existed until too late to watch it on the big screen.
Well, I mean, hopefully there'll be a revival when the sequel is made, and then you can go and see it.
That'd be good.
Have you got a name for it? Book Smarter?
Ooh.
Book Smarten? Book Smartin?
Is it a verb? I'm not sure. It sounds like it's now Book Smarter.
Would you would you have them fall out beforehand? And then
it does seem like the obvious, but is that only because that's the sort of thing we see a lot of, and it's a bit of a trope? So I'm not sure about that. You're definitely some kind of, or maybe the hilarious coincidence sort of thing.
Yeah, because there is, when you're friends in high school, you're not always friends when you're older.
That's right.
And you do drift away, which would be another thing to show on film.
I think that could be interesting. Reunited in some kind of back home event, something's, again, these are all tropes, but they can be done well. They go back home for a funeral or whatever, and then
one of the another friend's getting married.
Yeah, exactly. A wedding. Let's say make it a bit more cheerful. Let's say it's a wedding. And I really hope they would bring back pretty much all those supporting characters, because they're all fantastic.
I was just thinking they've got to bring back Billy Lord's character, because she's brilliant.
She's so great in this. Oh, she could have her own spin-off. I would watch that in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
I like Jared. He's my favourite character.
He had a nice arc. They all did as well. I love the way that this film didn't kind of fall down on stereotypes or get obsessed with single kind of character tropes. It was all very much like everyone was not quite as you initially imagined them to be,
everyone has their moment as well, which is really nice. It's really good film, because it's not just a straightforward film. There's lots of exciting filmmaking in there, like the animation bit or the puppets bit, and it's also it's so relatable. It's not stuff that you think would be like, what's the word I'm trying to think, unbelievable. This is all stuff that actually probably happens, and you can relate to it. I think it's incredible. Yeah,
it's authentic, it's funny, it's clever, it's heartwarming, it's progressive. I love it.
It's also got a banging soundtrack.
Certainly has.
It definitely has. Absolutely. It's a really great show. All your choices have been so good, Anna. I think.
Why, thank you. I've enjoyed it very much.
I even don't begrudge having to watch Basic Instinct 2, because I think it was just a great choice for worst sequel.
Thank you.
Those were Anna Smith's Unequal sequels. What excellent choices.
Great picks.
Excellent choices. She's brilliant. I really liked that.
A lot of fun, that one, wasn't it? And obviously,
It was.
finally someone picked Back to the Future 2 as the best ever sequel. Tom.
Yeah, you're listening, Tom Davis.
Yeah, no, she was great. I love Anna. She was high on the list of people to get on this podcast, and finally she said yes. Hopefully she enjoyed being on the podcast. We love her podcast, Girls on Film podcast. Go listen to that. It's a fantastic podcast. Her guests are just incredible, and it's so interesting. And it's a great podcast. But her picks, brilliant picks.
Back to the Future 2, best sequel.
You know,
I love that we managed to get one episode of it being the worst sequel, and then the next episode it being the best sequel, and poor little Dave having a little mental breakdown as to whether it's the best film or the worst film ever.
It's definitely the best. It was nice to talk about it in a positive light today, like really delve into it.
Yeah.
I love Back to the Future 2. It's so nice that other people do like Back to the Future 2. It is, she said, I don't think it's as good as Back to the Future 1. I still think it is. She's also a big fan of Back to the Future 3, which is also good. Wow, yeah.
Absolutely. And for her worst sequel, probably one of the worst films we've seen, Basic Instinct 2.
Wow.
A movie so bad, it's not on any streaming whatsoever. We had to buy the DVD.
It is incredibly bad. I remember watching it. It must have been when it came out. I didn't go to the cinema and watch it, but
No.
I think my friend had it on DVD, and I thought, I'll check that out. It is fucking shocking. It is cringeworthy. It's not sexy in any way. Everyone's very bad in it. It's not a good film. And again, it was on the list of bad sequels I thought would come up quite early on in this project, and I'm surprised it took this long. But you know why? Because I just don't think people have watched it.
No, I think that's what it is. Actually, I think it would. The reason it's not heralded as like the prime example of a terrible sequel is because no one watched it.
Yeah,
and as you can tell by the fact that we couldn't find it anywhere and had to buy it on DVD.
Sadly, not on Blu-ray, so we had to deal with SD stuff.
Oh no!
And obviously, Dream Sequel, Rich. Now, Dream Sequel. Booksmart is probably still the most excited you are ever about a film we've mentioned on this podcast.
I love it. I've really, really loved that movie, and I only watched it because of the podcast, and so that makes it even more special.
Yeah.
No, I first watched it for Ashanti Omkar's episode, and I just really enjoy that film. I really, really like it.
It's like you're being offered your favourite food when we mentioned it. You're like, ooh.
Yeah, I guess because it's kind of new and it came out of nowhere for me.
Yeah.
Like, it's still really quite fresh, and I would happily just watch it again right now, to be honest. I just really enjoyed it.
And we would happily take a sequel at some point in our lifetime, I think. We're not saying it has to be straight away.
No. But if you're listening, Olivia Wilde, then we'd very much like a sequel, please.
Yes, please. And yeah, just secondly, again, listen to Anna's podcast, Girls on Film. Fantastic podcast. It's really worth checking out. Fantastic guests. Really incredible guest, really interesting.
She's had Linda Hamilton on it, for goodness sake.
I mean,
talking of like epic sequels.
She had Jamie Lee Curtis the other day. Last episode had Elizabeth Banks on it. It's a really important, different podcast. I think it's really worth checking out. Rich, what else you got to say?
Well, talking of important podcasts that are worth checking out, I hope everyone can go back and listen to all of our past podcasts. If you tuned in because you're a big fan of Anna, and why wouldn't you be, because she's brilliant, and you've thought, oh, do you know what? These guys were all right. I could listen to more of their sequel-based nonsense. Go back. We've got 3 other series of interview episodes for you to listen to. Got loads of extra episodes. And while you're there, if you want to share the love a little bit, give us a little tick, give us 5 stars, write us a little review. We'll absolutely love that. If you want to get in touch with us and tell us what you think about any of the movies that we've talked about on this episode, we're on social media at Unequal Sequel on Twitter and on Instagram, and you can email us unequalsequel@hotmail.com. Any emails we receive, we will read out and talk about in our monthly roundup at the end of this month. And also, if you think, do you know what? This might be rapidly becoming my favourite podcast. I just need more of this. Well, you're in luck, because that you can have more of this podcast, and you can hear more of Anna as well, because we have a sequel to this episode, only available to subscribers on Another Slice. It's $2.99 a month. Go to anotherslice.com/unequal sequel, and you'll be able to subscribe as a premium member and get all that extra content, including a sequel to this very episode.
Yes.
Impressive,
Or if you just
right?
want to support us and be like, guys, you're doing a good job. I'm not going to have a coffee this month. Here's $2.99. We truly appreciate it. We know times are extremely difficult at the moment. So we are keeping everything else free, all extra episodes, all interview episodes. Everything is still where it's meant to be. Just if you want that extra little bit, it is there, and more is coming. We've got big plans.
So many plans. Dave's got so many plans to go on our subscription service that I'm not sure how I'm going to keep up with them all.
No, me neither. To be honest, I've got thoughts. Yes, Rich, you got anything else to say?
No, I think that's it, mate.
Thank you for listening. You're all fucking brilliant. It is a namaste from me.
Oh, nice.
Apparently it's
Spiritual.
Goodbye in Hindi as well, apparently. That's what the internet is telling me. If it's not, I do apologise. And it is also a goodbye from him.
Bye!
I think it's a lovely day to go and see if all your watches are working properly, because all three of mine, batteries have died at the same time. Weird.
It's weird when that happens, right? Mine always do that too.
Bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, mad.
Anyway, I've got to go and find a battery man now. So I'll see you next week. It's a bye-bye.
Buy a windy up one.
I've got a pocket
get a
watch that
windy up
winds
one.
up, but I can't walk around with a pocket watch all the time because I would look like a dickhead.
Better for the environment, though.